Hi everybody, it's Heath, and I am sitting on the deck of my house, which did not burn down when the CZU Lightning Complex Fire threatened it, and I'm just so happy to be here right now. We got evacuated twice. The fire was 1.8 miles away from our house up the hill. Our entire neighborhood was evacuated, along with tens of thousands of other people. You know, I'm sure you've seen it on the news if you haven't lived through it yourself, in one of the many regions of California that is still on fire in this state. But boy, living through it is a whole different kettle of fish. So this week we're not going to do a book review. I want to break down my experience as an Enneagram 7 of going through this, and I'm going to try not to make it long, but I just want to give you guys a heads up on a real life situation that gave me an opportunity to see my own personality in action. So, Enneagram 7 versus the CZU Lightning Complex Fire is what we're talking about today. So, you may know that 7s are a positive outlook type, along with 2s and 9s. They are part of the harmonic group that Riso and Hudson discuss in their book, The Wisdom of the Enneagram. And I, as a positive outlook person, have a tendency to reframe things so that things don't seem so bad, or so that we find the silver lining in whatever difficult situation there might be. And sometimes that's good because it helps cheer people up, and sometimes it's terrible because it denies their pain or your own pain that you're going through. So I'll just tell you what happened in the fire situation. So the fire started, the sky was this just horrific orange color, the air was full of smoke, and for 3 days no one was fighting this fire. And from the very beginning, the fire was 1.8 miles away from our house. That was scary, okay? It was 0% contained. No one was coming. There were so many fires everywhere. We were not the priority in California. There were 2 other regions ahead of us, and they just didn't have the people to come and help. So no one was coming. And in fact, my husband found an article in the LA Times where the fire coordinator of this area for CAL FIRE said that, you know, if they couldn't hold this one certain area, that they were just going to let the whole Highway 9 funnel corridor burn and then try to hold it off at Santa Cruz. Well, we are in that corridor, and that was pretty horrifying to hear that not only was probably no one coming, but that they were just planning on letting many, many homes burn, including our own. So there is no way to reframe that. If you've ever lost a home to fire, man, my heart goes out to you, because I was absolutely facing that. This is not an exaggeration. This is not something that, you know, a 7 is manufacturing and creating hyperbole about, because you know that 7s can do that too. Or maybe you don't. So that's a thing to know about them as well. But yeah, there's just no way to reframe the idea that you might come home to literally a pile of ash where your home was standing. So 7s are also a fear type, along with the 5s and the 6s, right? We're in the thinking triad, we're in the head center, and our chief emotion is fear. So you know that 7s typically want to flee fear and run into exciting and fun things to distract them from that fear. But again, there's no way to reframe the prospect of losing your entire house, and I was scared sometimes. There were moments when I was just gripped with fear, and my heart raced at the thought of losing almost everything that I own, and losing all the hard work that my husband has put into our house, and losing the neighborhood with all of the people we love. Just terrible, terrible thought. So I watched the briefings twice a day. CAL FIRE came out with a briefing in the morning of what they'd done the night before, and then in the evening of what they'd accomplished during the day. And man, I watched those as soon as they came up on YouTube because I wanted to be informed. That's a 7 thing. It's a human nature thing as well, but especially the head types want to know exactly what's going on at all times. But I have to say, in the midst of it, I never lost sleep. And it might be just that I was so exhausted that, background emotion that I didn't lose any sleep. But there have definitely been situations in my life and periods of time where I was so worried about a thing that I slept very poorly for many, many nights in a row. And I'm really thankful that that wasn't the case with the fire. All right. Self-preservation. That is my dominant instinct. The 3 dominant instincts for human beings are sexual, social, and self-preservation instincts. We have all 3. One dominates. We have them in a stack. And so I'm a self-pres 7. So it will probably not surprise you to know that when we went to our second evacuation point, because the first place we went to with a friend also got evacuated. So I went out and bought groceries thinking that I was just buying a normal amount, and this seemed like a good idea, and my husband could take this in his work truck while he was running around doing his work all day. He works for the water department in this area, which really got hit hard by the fire, so he's been working very hard and very long hours. So I was just, buying stuff that made sense. Well, $300 later, I realized that maybe I had overbought. So that's just typical self-preservation 7, man. We like to have comfort and we like to have everything we think we're going to need. So that's one way that my self-preservation instinct manifested. And the first thing that I packed when I heard the rumor that we were probably going to have to evacuate was all of my scrapbooks. I am a paper crafter. I used to make scrapbooks. Now I just mainly focus on greeting cards. And I have just several boxes worth of scrapbooks, and those are the first things that I packed because you can't replace those things, first of all. And then the second point is because I was preserving memories. I was preserving my family in a way by saving all of these photos that I had collected and written about. And that's really a beautiful thing about being self-pres. Actually, there are different zones of being self-pres if you've learned that from Riso and Hudson and the Enneagram Institute. And if you haven't, I really recommend that you take part 3 training, because Russ Hudson, at least when I took it, really went into what those 3 zones are for each of the instincts, actually. But for self-preservation, 2 of them are health and wellness and sort of nesting and domesticity, and those are the 2 that I tend to focus on and dwell in. So I think it's actually pretty beautiful that of all the material possessions that I have, that the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that I preserved my memories of my family. And then, again, one of the zones for self-preservation is that domesticity, or it's a nesting, right? I want a comfortable nest that's attractive and where I can just have all my stuff and feel safe and cozy. And the prospect of losing that was pretty significant. It really seemed terrible. And again, 2 different sets of friends volunteered their homes. One of them even gave up her bedroom for us. I mean, I was just astonished and humbled by the wonderful generosity of my friends. But even so, it's not your own place. There are still things that take longer because your things aren't where they're supposed to be, and you have to keep going and getting them. And I did have the foresight to bring my own pillow because, again, I'm self-pres. But the bed is different, and just everything is different. And again, totally and eternally grateful for those precious friends who took me and my husband in. But it's not your own nest. And so the prospect of losing everything that my husband and I had created here, It was pretty hard sometimes. But again, as I said, I didn't get overwhelmed. And that's, I think, because of the next point I want to talk about, which is the practicality of the seven. It's a very interesting dichotomy to me that sevens are both very practical and also super idealistic. So we can have these amazing dreams and visions of what life should be like, but then sometimes there's a part of us that's just like, okay, here's where the rubber meets the road, here's what needs to happen. And so I realized, even though that prospect of losing my nest was really real and scary, I knew that I had done what I could, that I had packed everything, that I could think of that made sense, and that the rest of it was out of my control. I mean, at some point you just have to realize I can't make myself sick over something when I don't even know if it's gonna happen. And even if it does happen, I literally have zero control over it. So I think that's actually one of the things that enabled me to sleep through the night the whole time we were displaced, which was only a week and a half. I have friends who are still displaced, and there's at least one woman at my church whose house burned down. And there's a lot still going on. The fires are still burning, but progress is made every day, and that's a really cool thing. But again, there are things you can control and things you can't. So that's one of the things that helped me through at this point. So I'm so thankful to be home. The first couple of days that I was back home, I just would be walking down the hallway, and I would just put both arms out, and I would touch each side of the wall as I walked down the hallway, just to feel that this was real, that my house was solid and it was still standing. So needless to say, I'm not quite back into my routine yet. There was a lot to be done once we got home. That's taken up a good chunk of my free time. And so I knew that I was not going to get out a new book review for a while. So I'm doing this one instead. I have so many good other books in the pipeline to talk about. There's an ebook on the Enneagram prayer that's just beautiful. And I'm only like a quarter of the way through, and I keep working, to try to get through it so that I can share it with you. It's just great. And then there's this book, The Enneagram of Discernment, which I haven't even cracked open yet. Very excited about this. So of course I'll review that as soon as I'm able. And then I've also got Self to Lose, Self to Find by Marilyn Bansell. I actually did a blog post of this when her original version came out, which she self-published, and I love it, and it's great. But now she's revised it a little bit. It's in hardback. It was picked up by a traditional publisher, which is fantastic. So I'm going to do a review on this book as well. This one might be the next one that I do. Yeah, I've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline, but again, it's just a slow process of squaring things away so that I can get back to the normal routine of making videos. So if you liked hearing about what it's like to be a 7 in the midst of a crisis, getting a little bit more insight, I'd love it if you would hit that like button. If you disliked it, please not only hit the dislike button, but tell me in the comments why, because that's how I get better, and that's how I learn how to serve you guys better. And if you want to subscribe and find out about all things Enneagram, including more Enneagram book reviews, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And until next time, thanks for listening, and blessings on your journey.